On my wedding day, I found my father standing in a hallway with no seat at all, while 9 people from my fiancé's family sat at the table that was supposed to be his. Table 1, front and center, the table meant for our parents. Instead, my mom and dad had been shoved to table 14, the very last table in the room, jammed between the kitchen door and a trash can. And when I confronted the man I was about to marry, he said one sentence about my father that split my life into a before and after. I was standing there in a wedding dress, with 200 guests waiting on the other side of the wall, and in that moment I made a decision that ended my wedding, exposed his family, and changed everything that came after. So if you've ever watched someone disrespect the people who built you, the people who sacrificed for you, the people who loved you before you had anything to offer back, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. And in the comments, tell me your city and your local time. Because this story starts in a ballroom worth $85,000 and ends at a kitchen table where every single seat meant something.
My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm 29 years old in the part of this story that still hurts to tell. And before any of this happened, I honestly believed I understood the difference between money and class. I grew up in Millfield, Ohio, population around 8,000, the kind of place where people know which truck belongs to which driveway, and where your business can travel from the post office to the gas station before you even get home. I was raised in a 2-bedroom house on Birch Lane. Not cute 2-bedroom, not HGTV 2-bedroom. I mean a real working family house. The water heater hummed through the wall of my bedroom, the hallway floor creaked in winter. In January, the windows gathered frost on the inside corners because my dad was always trying to squeeze one more year out of everything before replacing it. But that house was warm, not just physically, emotionally. My father, Dave Marshall, was a plumber for 35 years. Same company, same route, same lunch pail. His hands were always rough, split at the knuckles in winter, permanently lined with grease that no amount of soap ever fully removed. Around year 20, his knees started going. Around year 30, his back joined them. He never complained in front of me, not once. He'd come home around 6, tired in a way that bent his whole body slightly forward, scrub his hands with that orange gritty soap that smelled like citrus and gasoline, and then ask me every single day, "What'd you learn today, baby girl?" Not how was school, not did you behave. What did you learn? Like knowledge itself was something sacred. My mom, Linda Marshall, worked the lunch line at Millfield Elementary, which to some people sounds small, until you realize that woman fed 400 children a day and remembered every allergy, every preference, every sad little face that walked through her line pretending they weren't still hungry. There were kids who mysteriously got an extra roll, kids whose tray somehow got a heavier spoonful of mashed potatoes, kids who accidentally received a second carton of milk. My mother noticed everything: hunger, embarrassment, need, and somehow she made help feel like dignity. We weren't rich, not even close. I wore hand-me-down coats. My 7th grade winter jacket had belonged to my cousin 2 years earlier. We stretched leftovers. We reused gift bags. Vacation meant one long weekend at a lake if the car was behaving that year. But I never felt poor. Because I never felt unloved. My parents made ordinary life feel solid, safe, enough. I got through college on scholarships, loans, and stubbornness. I became a nurse practitioner at a community clinic off Route 9. I paid off my student debt by 28. I built a good life. Not glamorous, not flashy, but mine. And every brick in that life sat on a foundation built by Dave and Linda Marshall. Then I met Garrett Whitfield. I met him on a Tuesday in October, about 2 years before the wedding. His father came into the clinic for a routine physical. Garrett drove him. I still remember the first time I saw him, leaning against the reception counter in a navy quarter-zip, dark hair pushed back, expensive watch flashing under the fluorescent lights like it was offended to be there. He smiled at me with the kind of confidence that only comes from a lifetime of being welcomed everywhere. And I smiled back. We went to dinner that Friday, then again the next week, then again after that.
He was attentive in all the ways that sweep a woman off her feet when she spent most of her life around men too tired, too practical, or too emotionally shut down to perform romance. He opened doors, remembered details, sent flowers to the clinic just because, drove 40 minutes to bring me soup when I had the flu. He made me feel chosen. And looking back, that was the first danger. Because when someone makes you feel chosen, you can miss all the ways they expect you to feel grateful for it. The Whitfields were local royalty, in the kind of ways small-town money loves to be. Real estate developers, 3 generations deep. Their last name was on a subdivision, a commercial plaza, and a bronze plaque at the country club. His father, Richard, ran the company. Garrett handled acquisitions. His mother, Constance, chaired charity galas and sat on nonprofit boards and wore cream silk at lunch like she was being followed by invisible cameras. The first time I met her, she shook my hand, looked me up and down and said, "A community clinic, how interesting." And then, smiling over her wine glass, added, "Garrett usually dates in more similar circles." I felt the sting. Of course I did. But Garrett squeezed my knee under the table and whispered, "She'll come around." Love makes fools of smart women in very specific ways. Not because we can't see red flags, because we rename them. We call disrespect formality. We call cruelty stress. We call classism old-fashioned. We call cowardice conflict avoidance. Constance never warmed up. She didn't insult me directly, not in obvious ways. That would have been easier. She did it in needlework, little stitches. "Oh, your parents still live in Birch Lane? How quaint. I forget, does your father own his own business or just work with his hands? Linda made that? She's very resourceful." There's a kind of insult designed to leave no fingerprints. She was an expert at it. And Garrett? He always had an explanation. That's just how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. You know, Mom. Let it go, babe. I hate that phrase now. Let it go. Women are asked to let things go so often we start dropping pieces of ourselves without noticing. 14 months into dating, Garrett proposed. Private dining room, candles, string quartet. The whole thing looked like a luxury hotel ad. I said yes because I wasn't marrying Constance. I was marrying the man who texted me good morning every day. The man who said he loved how grounded my parents were. The man who once told me he couldn't wait to call my dad Dad. I believed him. That was my mistake. Because the moment the engagement became a wedding, the balance shifted. Constance chose the venue, Whitfield Country Club. Not the little church on Maple where my parents were married, not the garden space I liked. Her venue. She chose the planner. She chose the florist. She chose the menu. She chose the guest list shape without technically choosing the guest list. And every time I pushed back, Garrett pressed my hand and said, "Let her have this one. After the wedding, it's just us." I want to be honest here. I was not some spineless woman sleepwalking into disaster. I made what felt like a rational calculation. Lose small battles, win the war. What mattered, I told myself, was the marriage, the years after the wedding, the house, the future, the actual life. The flowers didn't matter. The napkins didn't matter. The venue didn't matter. Except small humiliations are never just small humiliations. They're field tests. People push where they hope to control you later. And every time I yielded, Constance learned something valuable. She learned how much she could take before I called it what it was. By the morning of June 14th, she knew. The wedding day started at 6 in the morning. I woke up in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. My dress was hanging on the closet door. Ivory satin, tea-length, simple and elegant. I'd paid for it myself. Constance had tried to steer me towards some designer monstrosity from Columbus that cost more than my first used car. I said no. That dress was one of the last decisions I still recognized as mine. By 10, I was at the country club. The place looked unreal. White peonies, gold-rimmed chargers, crystal glassware, 300 candles. The kind of atmosphere designed to make ordinary people lower their voices when they walk in. 200 guests were expected, and I noticed something immediately. The Whitfield guests filled the center of the room like cream rising to the top. Front rows, front tables, best sight lines, prime placement.
My people, my aunt from Akron, my clinic coworkers, old neighbors, family friends, were scattered around the edges like afterthoughts. Margot, my maid of honor and best friend since college, leaned in during a rehearsal pass and whispered, "Why are your people in the back?" I laughed too quickly. Probably just numbers. Margot looked at me for one long second. She didn't believe me. I didn't believe me either. But denial is easiest when the music is already playing. The ceremony happened at noon.
I walked down the aisle. Garrett smiled. The guests stood. The flowers were perfect. The vows sounded beautiful. And from the outside, it all looked like the kind of wedding people envy. That's the thing about beautiful disasters. They photograph well. After the ceremony, guests moved to cocktail hour on the terrace. I slipped into the reception hall to check the setup. That's just who I am. I verify things. I notice details. It comes with working in medicine. The room was immaculate. 20 round tables in white and gold. Place cards in brass holders. Head table centered like a stage. Table 1 was set for 10. That was where both sets of parents were supposed to sit. I picked up the first card. Gerald Whitfield. Then Lydia Whitfield. Then the Porters. Then the Hendersons. Then 2 more Whitfields. Then another family associate. I checked again. No Dave Marshall. No Linda Marshall. My heartbeat changed. Not faster. Heavier. I started moving from table to table. My dress whispered over the floor. My fingers kept lifting cards. Table 6. Table 9. Table 11. Then I found them. Table 14. Last table in the room. Wedged beside the swinging kitchen door and a service station. There was a trash can 2 feet away. Not hidden. Not subtle. A real stainless steel trash can with a foot pedal. The chairs weren't even the same as the others. They were padded backup chairs. Folding chairs dressed up for the occasion and still failing. I just stood there staring at my parents' names in gold script beside a trash can. And I remember this strange clinical thing happening in my brain. Triage. That's what it felt like. Assessment under pressure. If I do nothing, what happens next? My father sits down. He straightens his tie. He pretends not to notice. My mother folds her napkin and ignores the kitchen noise. Constance watches and learns that she can put them anywhere. And Garrett helps her do it. Not just tonight. Forever. Every holiday. Every birthday. Every future gathering. Table 14. I found the wedding planner Diane near the bar. Who changed the seating chart? She didn't even blink. Mrs. Whitfield adjusted it this morning. She said the bride approved. The bride approved. That sentence made my skin go cold. I left her standing there and went looking for Garrett. I still believed, right up until that moment, that this was a misunderstanding he would fix. That's the part I'm embarrassed by now. How badly I wanted him to still be the man I thought I was marrying. I found him in the groomsman's suite adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror, like he was in a cologne commercial. Who moved my parents off the head table? He barely looked up. Mom rearranged some things this morning. I stared at him. They're at table 14, Garrett, next to the kitchen, next to the trash. He let out this slow breath, this exhale full of annoyance, like I was bringing him a minor inconvenience instead of a moral emergency. Fonda, not now. Not now? When? After they've eaten dinner by a garbage can? He turned then, calm as ever. Infuriatingly calm. The Hendersons and Porters are at table 1. They're important. It was the kind of sentence that hits harder because of what it doesn't say. I heard the missing half anyway. Important, unlike your parents. I said, more important than my family? He put his hand on my arm in that soft, controlling way some men master, gentle enough to look kind, firm enough to redirect. You're stressed. Let's just get through tonight. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Tomorrow he'd talk to his mother. Tomorrow we'd set boundaries. Tomorrow things would be different. Tomorrow is where weak men store all the courage they don't actually have. I walked out because something in me had started cracking, and I needed air before I either screamed or begged. On the way down the hall, I passed the welcome table and saw a stack of ceremony programs. I opened one. There was a section titled, "With Love and Gratitude to Our Families." Richard and Constance Whitfield, Gerald and Lydia Whitfield, Thomas Whitfield, the Whitfield Family Foundation. That was it. My parents' names were gone. In the proof I'd approved 3 weeks earlier, my parents had been listed first. I had written that line myself. With deepest love to Dave and Linda Marshall, whose sacrifices made all of this possible. Gone. Not moved. Erased. That was the moment the last of my excuses for them began to die. I found Marco outside the bridesmaid suite. One look at my face and she put down her lipstick. What happened? I told her everything, fast. The seating chart, the program, Garrett's response. She didn't interrupt. Didn't gasp. Didn't do that thing people do when they want your pain to become their theater. She just listened, then said, "What do you want to do?" That question matters. Not, "What will you do?" Not, "What should you do?" What do you want? Because for the first time all day, someone was asking me to center myself. I said, "I don't know yet." She nodded. Then let's get facts. Margot is a lawyer, sharp, controlled, impossible to rattle. And then she told me something that changed everything. The marriage license hadn't been signed yet. The ceremony was done, the photos were done, the rings were on our fingers. But the actual legal signature, the one that mattered, was still in Diane's folio, waiting for after dinner, because Constance wanted the signing done publicly, like some elegant little performance. No signature, no marriage. That truth slid into me like oxygen. I was not trapped. I walked back toward the hall outside the groomsmen's suite, because I still needed one final answer. Not from paperwork. From him. The door was cracked. I was about to step in when I heard Constance's voice. Low, precise, controlled. Look at her father. That suit is ancient. Garrett said nothing. Then Constance again. And her mother. Did she sew that dress herself? Garrett, they look poor. You cannot have them at the front table. Our guests will notice. And then I heard the sentence that ended my wedding before I had the strength to admit it. Garrett said, "The Marshalls are fine in the back. It's more appropriate." More appropriate. I don't think I breathed for a full second after that. Not because it surprised me, because it clarified everything. There are moments in life when confusion burns away all at once. Not slowly. Instantly. Like a curtain catching fire. I pushed open the door. Constance spun first, smile already assembling itself. "Fonda, sweetheart." I heard everything. Garrett's face tightened. Heard what? I looked straight at him. The part where my parents look poor. The part where table 14 is more appropriate. The part where you agreed. Constance tried to step in with that polished social queen voice. "This is only about logistics. You called my father a plumber, like it was something shameful." Her jaw moved. "You called my mother a lunch lady, like she should be embarrassed." Garrett said my name in that warning tone. Fonda. And I remember feeling this eerie stillness inside my chest. No panic, no confusion, no desperate need to be chosen, just stillness. Like my whole body had finally caught up with what my mind had been refusing to know. I said, "I'm not marrying into a family that treats love like a seating chart." And then I turned and left. No one followed me. That mattered too. I found my parents at table 14. My dad was sitting too straight, which meant he was uncomfortable. His tie was perfect, his jacket was buttoned, his shoes had that careful shine that comes from polishing them with a kitchen rag and drugstore polish. My mom was smoothing her dress where the lace sleeve met the cuff. A server burst through the kitchen door behind them and the metal hinge banged against the wall. My mother flinched. My father did not. That image will never leave me. How hard he was working to protect my feelings by pretending not to notice his own humiliation. He smiled when he saw me. "You look beautiful, baby girl." I nearly broke right there. I said, "Dad, I'm so sorry." He lifted one hand, stopping me. "I can sit anywhere." That was my father, still trying to make me comfortable while sitting beside a trash can at my wedding. I told them, "Stay here, I'll be right back." Then the reception began. Guests filtered in. Music played. The MC welcomed the Whitfield family by name. Table 1 stood to applause. No one mentioned the Marshalls. No one acknowledged the people who had quietly contributed $12,000 to the wedding meal. That's right. My parents had saved over years to help pay for the catering. The salmon, the wine, the desserts, the polished plates. The people who paid for the meal were sitting by the garbage. And then Constance walked past table 14 with a friend. My mother was trying to tuck a loose thread back into the cuff of her sleeve. Constance looked at it and smiled that small, hard smile she reserved for private cruelty. "Bless her heart," she said to her friend. "Someone should have bought her a proper dress. But I suppose you have to know your place." My mother looked down. My father reached under the tablecloth and took her hand. That did it. Not the seating chart, not the program, not even Garrett's betrayal. That.
Watching my mother shrink into herself to avoid making trouble. Watching my father hold her hand because that was all he could do without ruining my wang. I crossed the room, grabbed Garrett's arm behind a column, and told him, "Your mother just humiliated mine, right now, in front of guests. Go make her apologize." He looked tired, irritated, embarrassed for himself, not for me. "Can we please just get through tonight?" "No, go fix it." And then he said the sentence that killed whatever tiny, dying part of me still wanted to forgive him. "Your parents will be fine. They're tough." Tough. As if surviving disrespect means you should be asked to endure it. As if love means making the strong people take the hit because they won't complain. He went back to table 1, to his mother, to his wine glass, to the people who mattered. And in that moment, he chose. So I chose too. I sat down at table 14 between my parents. My mother whispered, "Honey, you should be up front." I said, "My family is here, so I'm here." Then I looked across the room at Margot. She was already watching. I gave her one nod. She stood up. I stood up too. The walk from table 14 to the stage felt longer than it was. My heels clicked against the hardwood, and the room slowly noticed me in waves. Conversation died table by table. By the time I reached the microphone, it was nearly silent. Derek, the MC, smiled uncertainly and offered me the mic. I took it, and I looked out over 200 faces. Then I said very clearly, "Thank you all for being here. I know you came to celebrate a wedding, but before this evening goes any further, I need to tell the truth about what happened in this room." No one moved. I pointed to the back corner. "My parents are sitting at table 14. I'd like all of you to look at table 14 for a moment." And they did. Every head in that room turned toward the back, toward the kitchen door, toward the folding chairs, toward Dave and Linda Marshall beside the trash can. You could feel understanding moving through the room like cold weather. First confusion, then discomfort, then shame. I said, "This morning, my parents were removed from their assigned seats at table 1 and moved to the last table in the room beside the service entrance. I did not approve that change. Constance Whitfield made that change." Gasps. Tiny ones. Sharp ones. The kind people make when the ugly thing finally gets named out loud. I kept going. When I confronted my fiancé, he told me not to make a scene. And when I heard him speaking privately to his mother, he said my parents were fine in the back because more important people were sitting at the front. Garrett stood up. "Fonda." I held up a hand. "Sit down." He actually did. I don't know if it was shock, guilt, or habit, but he sat. I said, "Let me tell you about the people you moved to table 14. Then I told them who my parents really were.
I told them about my father's 35 years under sinks and in crawl spaces and in winter mud, fixing the things other people take for granted. I told them about his knees, his one good suit, the 6 months he saved to buy it. I told them about my mother feeding hungry children and knowing every allergy and every face and every silent need that crossed her lunch line. I told my parents had contributed $12,000 toward the meal being served in that room. And then I looked directly at Constance Whitfield and said, "Every plate being eaten tonight was helped into existence by the 2 people you put next to the garbage." You could have heard a pin drop. Her face had gone pale, but her expression was rigid. Like even then, she still believed appearances might save her. I said, "I was prepared to begin a marriage today, but I will not sign my name to a life where the people who raised me are treated like something to hide." Then I unpinned my veil, folded it, set it down, and said, "I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter before I am anyone's wife." That line hit the room like thunder, and for the first time all day, I felt powerful. Not loud, not dramatic. Powerful. Because truth, once spoken cleanly, doesn't need ornament. I thanked the guests from my side for coming. I wished everyone well. And I said, "There will be no marriage license signed tonight." Then I stepped off the stage. My mother was crying by the time I reached her. My father stood up. I hugged them both between the folding chairs and the kitchen door. Margot appeared with my bag and coat already in hand. Of course she did. Behind us, I heard Constance's voice go brittle and high. "She's lost her mind." And Garrett calling after me, "Fonda, wait." I did not turn around. I did not hesitate. I walked out of that ballroom with my parents and my best friend, and the doors shut behind us like the end of a lie. That night, we sat at the kitchen table in my parents' house. Same chipped table from my childhood, same overhead light, same worn floor. At 9:15, Margot called to confirm the marriage license was unsigned, never witnessed, never filed. Legally, I had walked away clean. Then came the calls. 17 missed calls from Garrett, 3 from Constance, 1 from Richard. Then texts. "I'm sorry. Please talk to me. You embarrassed us. You overreacted. Come back. We can fix this. You'll regret this." It's amazing how quickly "I'm sorry" turns into "you ruined everything" when a man realizes apology won't restore his control. I blocked them all. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. And just like that, the story got heavier. I won't dress that part up. I sat on the bathroom floor with a positive test in my hand and cried until my face hurt. Not because I wanted Garrett back. Never that. Because being right doesn't make life easy. Because doing the brave thing doesn't exempt you from consequences. Because suddenly I wasn't just protecting myself. I was protecting a child. I told Garrett by email. 3 sentences. Reviewed by Margot. "I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. All future communication goes through counsel." His response came in 3 versions. First, pleading. Then, threatening. Then, forecasting doom. Same cowardice, different outfit. Constance tried calling the house line from a new number. My dad answered. I was standing nearby when he listened for 5 seconds, then said, "Call Miss Sunday. My daughter has legal representation. Speak to her attorney," and hung up. No speech, no shaking, no performance. That quiet click of the phone returning to the cradle felt more powerful than any scream. Then came the fallout. Not explosive, slow, precise. The kind of consequences money hates because money can't always stop reputation once it starts rotting from inside. People had seen what happened. 200 witnesses. And those witnesses went home and talked. A development partner backed away from a project with Richard. Constance was asked to step back from the charity gala she'd chaired for years. Social invitations cooled, smiles stiffened, calls stopped being returned as quickly. I didn't orchestrate any of it.
That's important. I didn't post online. I didn't campaign. I didn't chase revenge. I simply told the truth in a room full of people, and the truth did what it does. It spread. Months later, my daughter was born, Elise Marie Marshall. I gave her my last name, Marshall, the name of a plumber, the name of a lunch lady, the name of two people who taught me that dignity is not something other people get to assign to you. Now Garrett sees her under a formal custody agreement, 2 weekends a month. He shows up on time. He is gentle with her. And sometimes when he hands her back, I see a flicker of the man I thought he might have been. But then I remember something important. Potential is not character. What someone could have been is not the same thing as who they chose to be when it counted. Constance has never met Elise, not because I barred the door, because I set a boundary she considers beneath her. She still wants access without humility, love without accountability, family without respect. And that, to me, is just table 14 wearing pearls. A year later, the real revenge isn't that their perfect wedding was destroyed. It isn't that people whispered. It isn't that their reputation cracked. It isn't even that Garrett lost me in front of everyone he wanted to impress. The real revenge is simpler than that. Every Sunday night, my parents, my daughter, Margot, and a few people who actually love us gather around the old kitchen table at my parents' house. The light buzzes. The chairs don't match. The wallpaper is peeling in one corner. Mom makes fried chicken. Dad lets Elise steal his glasses. Someone always drops a fork. Someone always laughs too loud. And no one there is pretending. No one is performing class. No one is calculating appearances. No one is deciding who deserves to be seen. Every person belongs. Nobody is seated near the trash. Nobody is asked to be grateful for disrespect. Nobody is treated like an embarrassment that must be managed. That is my table 1. And the most satisfying part of this whole story is that I stopped begging for a seat in someone else's front row and built a life where the people I love are already at the center. That was the revenge. Not destroying their day, choosing not to destroy myself trying to stay in it. So when people ask me now whether I regret it, whether I regret taking the microphone, exposing them publicly, walking out in my wedding dress and blowing up the most expensive day of their lives, my answer is simple. No, because I did not ruin a marriage. I prevented one. I did not humiliate a good man. I revealed a weak one. And I did not overreact to a seating chart. I responded to a preview of the rest of my life. The real payoff wasn't watching Constance go pale. It wasn't Garrett sinking into his chair. It wasn't 200 people realizing exactly what kind of family they were dealing with. It was the moment my daughter was born, and I knew with absolute certainty that she would never grow up watching me trade dignity for proximity. She will never learn that love means swallowing insult. She will never learn that strong people should tolerate disrespect because they can handle it. She will never watch me seat my parents in the back of my own life just to keep peace with people who don't deserve it. That is the justice. That is the release. That is why I would do it all again. Sometimes karma doesn't look like a dramatic takedown. Sometimes it looks like clarity. Sometimes it looks like a closed door, a legal boundary, a new apartment, a baby with your last name, a smaller table filled with better people. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is refuse to sit quietly at table 14 when you know, deep in your bones, your family belongs at table 1. If this story hit you in the chest, like the video and subscribe for more emotionally charged Reddit revenge stories every week. And in the comments, tell me this. Did Fonda make the right choice? Would you have answered Richard's letter? And if you've ever had to stand up for your family, type table 1. Because some stories are about revenge, but the best ones? They're about finally remembering who deserved your loyalty all along.